You want to know which wide receivers you should be starting or sitting in week 6 of fantasy football season? Stick around and we'll let you know. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris. We're going to go game by game to tell you which wide receivers we feel good about and who should be on your bench for week 6. Now don't forget, bye weeks have started, so you won't see players from the Texans, Titans, Lions, or Raiders. We're going to go game by game to tell you our take on each wide receiver. But first, let's talk about the guys you really don't need to worry about. They should be in your lineup if you have them. Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans. All right, let's kick things off with a Thursday night matchup between the Commanders and the Bears. All right, Scary Terry didn't have a breakout game last week, but he did all right. How do you feel like he can do against the Bears?
I mean, I feel like he should do well, but he never does. I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, last week, smash spot, Dodson out, and then it's Diami Brown getting all the huge plays. So, he's a fine start if he's like your wide receiver 3, but not a must start.
Yeah, they're kind of spreading the ball around. It's weird. I kind of hate that, you call that game for a guy and then it's like the 4th string guy who does it instead. I guess they were covering Terry. They weren't covering Diami Brown. But anyways, McLaurin, I think he's fine as a start. But like you said, he's just not that must-start territory anymore, maybe like he should be. What about Curtis Samuel? Again, he did fine, but he's not having these huge games either.
Yeah, I think Curtis Samuel's a fine start this week. I might actually feel a little bit better about him because the Bears stud corner, there's talk that he will be back this week. So Samuel probably does draw the little bit of the better matchup. But, he really doesn't have a ton of upside. So again, a fine start, but not a must start.
Yep, I kind of feel like he's going to be like that all year. Samuel's like, you can flex him, but you don't have to. And then, what about Jahan Dotson, the rookie? Did miss last week. Not sure if he'll go in week 6. If he does, do you have interest?
Not really. I mean, maybe he'll have the Diami Brown game this week, but I'm not trusting it in my lineup. I'm gonna sit him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously Justin Jefferson had a massive game against Chicago last week, and he kind of does that against most teams. The Bears really don't give up a lot of touchdowns to wide receivers. And Dotson has kind of been touchdown dependent, so I don't feel like there's really any reason to start him, even if he happens to be 100%. So I can pass on Dotson. And then I guess we can talk about Darnell Mooney again. Like, he's just kind of this, deep ball or nothing guy, apparently. Do you think he does anything in this game?
No, I'm not starting Darnell Mooney yet, no.
Yeah. I mean, you could say, well, Washington's giving up a lot to wide receivers, and maybe, but that's a little overly optimistic. You should probably pass on Darnell Mooney. 49ers taking on the Falcons. Here we go with Brandon Ayuk. What do you expect about him this week?
He just is what he is with Jimmy G, right? Like 3-4 targets a game, maybe one deep ball, maybe he finds the end zone, but that's really all he is. And look, one thing about the Falcons, they've been getting destroyed on the ground, but they've been okay through the air because they have A.J. Terrell. So it's not, a smash spot like it seems like on paper. So I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk, nothing more than a desperation flex.
And I kind of feel like, again, that's what he is. He's going to be kind of touchdown or bust. Maybe he gets a big play. Maybe he does nothing. So if you need him, sure, but don't get your hopes up too much. And then on the other side, Drake London, great start the first couple weeks. Not so great the last couple of weeks. How do you think he does against the Niners?
Not good. I know the secondary is banged up, so that should help. But it's still a tough defense, and it's not so much even the defense. It's more the offense. This offense is just not fantasy friendly right now. So I'm not going to say you have to sit him like I did last week. I'm going to say he's more of a flex start.
Yeah, I think he could be, like you said, Mosley out for the season. Jimmy Ward broke his hand. They've got issues as far as injuries. It's still a good defense. And like you said, I don't think it's the matchups that have been the problem for London. It's the quarterback play. It's the offense in general. So he's a risky flex. Patriots going to take on the Browns. Don't know who's the quarterback in New England this week, but I do know that Jacoby Myers doesn't care. He put up over 100 yards last week with Bailey Zappi at quarterback. So is Jacoby Myers a guy that you feel you have to get in your lineup?
Look, I can't call him a must start. I'm going to say he's a fine start in PPR leagues, a solid start, but not a must start.
I'm going to go ahead and say must start. Look, this is a guy that in the 3 games he has played, and we forgot about him because he missed 2 games with an injury. We weren't even sure if he was going to play last week. But he's drawn 27 targets in 3 games, and I need to take it for what it's worth, but as far as PFF grading for wide receivers, he's top 5. Look, he knows how to get open. He's going to draw a ton of targets, and this is a secondary that could be susceptible. So I really feel good about Jacoby Myers. I'll say, yeah, I'm going to start him if I have him. On the other side, Amari Cooper, rock solid again last week, but this is definitely a tougher matchup against the Patriots.
Definitely a tougher matchup, but I just can't ever sit Amari Cooper. He's one of those guys like Gabe Davis, Mike Williams. He just has so much upside every week. Yeah, you're going to take your lumps sometimes when he gets, 1 catch, 2 catches, but it's worth it because like last week, he puts up those huge games and helps you win. So I have to start Amari Cooper.
That's exactly right. The clear number 1 in that offense. Look, maybe this is a down week for him. Not sure, but he's always got touchdown upside. I feel much better about Cooper than guys we've already talked about, like London or Ayuk or even McLaurin. So I feel like you kind of have to start him. Jets taking on the Packers. Let's get through this whole Jets wide receiver core because we don't know who's going to hit in every given week. Will it be Garrett Wilson this week?
Probably not. I'm sitting nobody here is getting a big enough target share, so I'm sitting Garrett Wilson.
I think you have to because, look, his 2 big games came at the very beginning, and that was with Joe Flacco. Ever since Zach Wilson came back, we've heard nothing from Garrett Wilson, so I think you got to sit him. What about Corey Davis? Looked like he was going to emerge as the number 1 guy, and then he kind of did nothing last week, 38 yards on 2 catches. Does he do anything this week?
Maybe, but I'm not banking on it. I'm sitting him as well.
All right. I mean, I think you could flex him. He might be okay in this matchup, but very risky, kind of a desperation flyer. And then there's Elijah Moore. Oh, so sad, Elijah Moore. Can you start him in this week?
Well, I've said no, and I'm gonna say no again. Just with Zach Wilson, for whatever reason, with Joe Flacco, they throw the ball 40 plus times, and with Zach Wilson, they run the ball a ton. Maybe that says something about Zach Wilson, but not enough targets here to go around. No to Elijah Moore.
Yeah, he's done nothing so far. It's not like this is an A-plus matchup, so you can't start Elijah Moore, unfortunately. Now, on the other side, you got Allen Lazard. How does he do against the Jets? Maybe. Does he get Sauce Gardner?
Probably not, because they move Lazard all over the formation, and I doubt Sauce is going to follow him around, but Lazard is what he is, right? He gets a decent amount of targets, a decent amount of catches, and can always score a touchdown, so if you need him as a flex, he's fine.
That's pretty much it. Always in play to score a touchdown. Not necessarily in play for a huge game. Once in a while, but I think he could be flexed. What about Romeo Doubs? Slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, especially last week when Randall Cobb comes out of nowhere and gets 13 targets or whatever. So, yeah, Doubs another guy, like more of a desperation flex.
Yeah, and to me, this is getting deep desperation. Doubs, I'd probably pass on him. And then now I guess we have to talk about Randall Cobb. All of a sudden, this big game. Do you think Randall Cobb has another sneaky good game?
I don't know. I'm not banking on it. I'm not putting him into my lineup. If he does, he does. Oh well, I missed out. But just way too risky for me. I'm gonna sit Randall Cobb.
Agreed. Don't go chasing last week's points. Probably won't happen again for another few weeks. You can pass on Randall Cobb. Jags taking on the Colts. Well, one of last week's busts was Christian Kirk. Does he bust again, or does he bounce back this week?
Who knows? I don't know. Marvin Jones getting tons of targets, Evan Ingram getting tons of targets. What's going on in Jacksonville right now? I still think you got to start Christian Kirk. You can't just look at 2 games and think like, oh my gosh, this is what it's going to be going forward. So, not a must start, but I think you still have to kind of start him.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea why all of a sudden he was one of the lowest guys on the totem pole in terms of targets, but I gotta think he'll be a little bit better at least this week. It's not a tough matchup. I think is a strong start. I don't know if I can say must start for sure, but pretty strong. And then Zay Jones, kind of always in that in-between range. I mean, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, at least he did have 8 targets last week, so he was still involved. It's not the best matchup, but it's not a horrible matchup. I think if you need him as a flex, you can flex him.
Yeah, he's always going to be kind of on that flex radar, so I think you could flex him this week too. And then Marvin Jones. I mean, did we find something here, or is this just a once a season kind of thing?
Yeah, this feels like Randall Cobb to me. I'm not chasing the one game where he gets a ton of targets out of nowhere. If it happens again, okay, fine. Maybe I'll start believing. But right now, he's staying on my bench.
Agree. I don't see it happening again. If it does, oh well. And then Michael Pittman, you noticed, has dropped out of the no doubt must start territory. A lot of people are worried about Pittman. Are you worried about him against the Jags?
No. If he struggles this week against the Jags, and look, he didn't really struggle last week. He just didn't have a big game. But if he struggles this week against the Jags, then I'll start to worry. But against the Jags, I think you've got to start Michael Pittman.
And we can't forget, look, that was on the road against a good Denver defense. It wasn't a great matchup for him. I think they'll get better, at least a little bit better. So, yeah, I still roll with Pittman. Not a lot of guys I would put over him. Alec Pierce, the rookie, emerged. Do you think that he continues to kind of share targets with Pittman, or was that just fluky?
I think it was a little fluky based on Darby getting hurt, and they were throwing a lot down the stretch. Still, Pierce didn't play a lot of snaps. I think he's still okay though in this matchup as a desperation flex.
I like Pierce. I've talked about him since the preseason. I mean, he looks like he could definitely be the number 2 target there in that offense. So now you have to consider, what is that worth, right? Because this offense hasn't been that good. I think you can flex him if you need him, but you're still going to see those booms and busts, on a weekly basis. I think he's fine this week against the Jags, but I'm not, running out to put him in my lineup over established guys. Vikings going to Miami to take on the Dolphins, who have given up a lot of yardage through the air. So obviously you're starting JJ. Does Adam Thielen have any interest for you?
I mean, yes, because it's not a terrible matchup. So, but not a guy I feel like you have to start. But if you need him as a flex, you can flex him.
Agree. So even though they got rolled by the Jets last week, it wasn't through the air. It was on the ground. So Thielen, again, kind of touchdown dependent like usual. I think he's fine. You can flex him, especially you're missing a wide receiver due to the buys, but, not a must start. KJ Osborne, you've been pretty quiet. I mean, he caught a few passes last week, but do you think he has anything in store for this week?
No, he's got to hit on a big play or a touchdown really to do anything, so I'm going to sit KJ Osborne.
Got to sit KJ Osborne too. A little worried also, we're seeing Irv Smith, the tight end, get more involved. Maybe Osborne isn't going to get as many targets as we expected. And then I know you still have to start Tyreek if he plays. Jalen Waddle, not quite there without Tua. We're going to assume Tua isn't starting. I'm just going to assume, because it doesn't sound like he will. Do you sit Waddle?
I don't think I can sit him unless it's Sky. If it's not Teddy, I know technically Teddy B is in the concussion protocol, but they're saying he has no symptoms. It's just this new concussion thing. So I expect that we're probably going to see Teddy Bridgewater. If it's Teddy Bridgewater, I feel good about Waddle. I'll still start him.
Yeah, you know the deal with Teddy, right? This spotter that nobody knows about saw something that nobody saw. They're going to go out of the way to be extra careful, but I do think Teddy does play. If he does, I do think it's so hard to sit Waddle. I mean, he's got that big playability. If it's Skylar Thompson again, I think I might consider sitting Waddle. Bengals going to take on the Saints. This Bengals offense definitely doesn't look like last year's version. Okay, so let's start with T. Higgins, who gave you big fat nothing if you started him because of that ankle. Does that worry you enough that you just don't even consider him this week?
It depends. If he practices all week and he's full practice and everything sounds good, I'm starting T. Higgins, no doubt about it. If it's like last week where he's not really practicing, they're going to test him pregame, I can't risk it again. I'll sit him.
It's so hard to know, right? And, he was cleared. He played, obviously, and it took till, I think, the second quarter for him to say, no, it's not going to happen. Could it happen again? Of course. But if he's in, yeah, I know you don't want that 0, but you also don't want him on your bench if he's a full go. So I do start him if he plays, but guys, always check the injury reports leading up to the game. And then let's talk about Tyler Boyd. I mean, it's been pretty quiet since early in the season. Does he do anything in this game?
I mean, he couldn't do anything last game without T. Higgins getting out targeted by Hayden Hurst, who was also coming into this game banged up. I can't start Tyler Boyd. He's on my bench.
He really should have done something last game, right? Against Baltimore's secondary, without T. Higgins. like, what's he going to take? I almost feel like this is a game where nobody has any interest in him, and he does catch a touchdown, but you can't risk it. Just bench him. And then the Saints, I mean, who's even going to be out there at wide receiver? So let's go through the list. Chris Olave, concussion protocol. If he does clear it, is he a for sure start?
Yeah, if Chris Olave somehow clears concussion protocol, which with the new concussion thing seems very unlikely, but if he does, I think you got to start him.
Yeah, it was a pretty hard hit. It didn't look like, something he just bounced back from. So I'm not expecting him to be out there, but if he does, I do think he's must start. Michael Thomas, if he does happen to come back, what about him?
I mean, if he comes back and Olave is out, I think he's a good start because they're really running out of people to throw to here. So if he plays and Olave is out, I think he's a good start.
Yeah, that'd probably be the only condition in which I would start him. If he's not just playing, but actually somewhat close to maybe 100%, which I don't know if Michael Thomas ever will be, and Olave doesn't play. But for the most part, I'm not interested in Michael Thomas. And then just for fun, look, what if, it's very possible, you got no Olave, no Michael Thomas, maybe no Jarvis Landry again. You got Tre'Quan Smith conceivably as your number one receiver. Is he worth a go?
There's nothing fun about starting Tre'Quan Smith. No, I'm not starting Tre'Quan Smith.
All right. I had to ask. But no, I'm not starting Tre'Quan Smith either. When the Ravens take on the Giants, we're also not quite sure who's going to be out there at wide receivers. So Rashad Bateman did miss last week. Depending on his status this week, may or may not go with kind of that mid-foot sprain. So if Bateman is out there, are you trusting him?
I mean, barely. It's not like the Giants are a pushover defense. And the Ravens aren't really targeting wide receivers very much. So I'm going to say if he plays, he's like a flex start.
Yeah, I think if he's out there, he's always he's always got an upside. We know that he can hit the deep ball, and he's always going to be the top target there after Mark Andrews, of course. But man, this Giants pass defense has looked really good, so I say he's a flex play, but not a must start. And then for the Giants, I mean, Darius Slayton, he's the number one receiver. He was number one receiver last week. Is he the guy there in New York?
I mean, maybe, but I'm not putting him in my lineup, so I don't care. If he does it again, great. Do it on my bench. Well, he's not on any of my benches, but do it on somebody else's lineup. Not going to be in mine. I'm not playing Darius Slayton.
That's probably a good strategy. Just like all the people who all of a sudden were interested in Richie James after a couple weeks. Just don't worry about who they're throwing to. You can just ignore the Giants receivers. Tampa Bay is going to go to Pittsburgh. Like Mike Evans should be a lock. Is Chris Godwin also a lineup lock?
I mean, I don't know because he didn't play a lot of snaps last week and he didn't get the targets I thought he would. But this Steelers defense is almost as bad as their offense right now. So I'm going to say you've still got to roll Chris Godwin out.
Look, Godwin, they didn't need to pass a ton last week. But here's the thing. Godwin, if he's healthy, he's always in my lineup. And this is a great matchup because Pittsburgh just all of a sudden terrible against the pass. I guess they do miss TJ Watt. So, yeah, definitely starting Godwin. And then for Pittsburgh, I mean, Kenny Pickett, let's see what he can do this week. But Deontay Johnson has just not done a lot the last couple of weeks. I mean, do you sit him?
Yeah, I mean, he got a ton of targets last week, which is good to see because, everybody just thought Pickett was just going to force feed Pickens. But Deontay, 13 targets last week, but didn't do a lot with them because he's got Kenny Pickett. It's a tough matchup. I'm going to sit Deontay Johnson.
I do think you have to sit Deontay Johnson until we see it proven. And again, bad matchup in terms of the pass defense here. So, yeah, I think you can bench Deontay Johnson. Any hope for George Pickens?
Big player bust. I'm, again, just... No, I need to see it first from Pickett, and it's a tough matchup. If it was a better matchup, I'd be playing these guys. But in a tough matchup, I got to sit them.
It is a tough matchup, like I said. But you know what? I do have some interest in Pickens this week. Again, not going to force him into my lineup, but I do think there's some upside here. So I'll say that you can flex him. All right, Carolina is going to go to LA to face the Rams. So now we're going to see the Panthers without their coach, Matt Rule, and without Baker Mayfield at quarterback because he's injured. So we got P.J. Walker throwing to DJ Moore. How does it make you feel about DJ Moore?
I mean, just when you think it can't get worse for DJ Moore, it somehow gets worse. Not starting DJ Moore, no.
You know what? Maybe this is a good thing for DJ Moore, and I'm not kidding. It couldn't be worse, could it? I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way and say go get DJ Moore everywhere, but look, I think at the very least he could start getting targeted in a better way. So I'll say maybe to DJ Moore. Maybe. All right. I'm not going to say that about Allen Robinson, but we still have to just let everybody know about Allen Robinson. Don't start Allen Robinson.
I mean, if you even still have him on your team, don't start Allen Robinson.
I feel like we should probably be asking instead about Ben Skowronek. Do you start Ben Skowronek because he's getting targeted, 8 targets last week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to be pretty desperate to start him still, especially in this game where, last week the Cowboys were up and they had to throw a lot. I don't think the Rams are going to be in that position this week, so desperation flex at best.
Cardinals taking on the Seahawks. Hollywood Brown, number 1 receiver in town, must start.
Yeah, how long until we put him in the no doubt must start group? I feel like he should be there. But yes, you're starting Hollywood Brown.
Definitely should start Hollywood Brown for sure against this defense. And then now we can talk about DK Metcalf as a strong start possibility because he's got a great quarterback all of a sudden. Who knew? DK Metcalf, he's got to be a strong start, right, against Arizona?
I mean, I don't know. This is like my brain can't handle this. I don't know if I can call him a strong start, but I think you're starting DK Metcalf this week.
Tyler Lockett, the same thing. He's doing just as well, if not better than Metcalf most weeks. I feel like you got to start Lockett.
Yeah, same thing. I think right now they're rolling. Gino's rolling. Not a scary defense. Got to start Lockett.
Buffalo Bills taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. We're expecting fireworks in this game. Hopefully not disappointed. So let's start with Gabe. I won you week 5 Davis if you started him. So does he do it again against KC?
I think he can. These are the type of matchups you need to take advantage of having Gabe Davis because he's not going to 6 targets, 2 catches. He's not going to boom every week. But in this matchup, in what should be an absolute shootout, I think you have to start Gabe Davis.
If you have Gabe Davis, this is exactly what you drafted him for, a game like this. And you saw this kind of guy you just can't keep on your bench because you never know. So absolutely have to start Gabe Davis. And then let's go through the whole list of the Kansas City receivers, which we're marginally, if at all, excited about. Juju Smith-Schuster.
I mean, again, if there's going to be a week to be excited about Juju, this is the week. So I'm not going to say a must start. I'm going to say you can flex him if you need him.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, not a good matchup on paper, but I think you could start him. I don't feel the same way about Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
I think I've said it in every video, and I'm going to say it in every video. I am never starting MVS.
Same here, and the same goes for Mecole Hardman. I'll pass.
Hard pass on Mecole Hardman.
Cowboys taking on the Eagles. All right, so we feel good about CeeDee Lamb again. How do you feel about Michael Gallup? I think 4 catches for 44 yards last week.
He's getting there, but I can't really recommend starting him just yet. And this is a tough matchup against the Eagles secondary, so I'm going to sit Michael Gallup.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be big play or touchdown dependent. Not a good matchup, so desperation flex for me. Devontae Smith, always got that upside, but not a good matchup because the Cowboys have a good defense. But how do you feel about him?
I feel pretty good about him. Always has tons of upside, like you said. Not a must start this week in this matchup, but I think as a flex, you can start him.
Yeah, I feel like Smith is always a guy that you can feel fairly good about. He's not going to boom every week. Who does? But I would still start him if I had him in this week. And then the Broncos taking on the Chargers. You got Russ, who's banged up and bad. Throwing to Cortland Sutton, but Sutton's been good enough. I mean, you could still keep him in your lineup probably.
Yeah, I think you have to keep him in your lineup. Getting the targets, getting the air yards. Got to keep him in your lineup.
Yeah, I think it's just so hard to sit a guy like that. I mean, he's a red zone target. He can catch the deep ball. Whether Russ can throw the deep ball is a different issue. But yeah, I still roll with Sutton. Jerry Jeudy, I'm a little more iffy about.
Definitely more iffy about Jerry Jeudy. I think you can flex Jerry Jeudy, but not a must start.
Yeah, he's a very iffy flex for me this week. So maybe, but I'm not feeling great about him. And then Mike Williams, kind of talk about him. He's a guy, I think, yes, you got to start him. I know the matchup isn't great, but he's always got so much upside. So I don't even care if Keenan Allen plays. I think you got to start Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think you got to roll him out. I mean, there's definite bust potential this week against the Broncos, but like you said, that upside is just too high. You've got to play Mike Williams.
And then we have to ask, even though at this point, like, what does it even mean to say Keenan Allen's getting better or making progress? And who knows? Keenan Allen, let's just pretend he might play a game. Do you put him in your lineup?
Again, I think I've been saying this every week, but as long as he's practicing all week and isn't coming down to a game time decision and he looks fine, I think he's a good start. Not a must start, but a good start.
Yeah, so probably no. But look, I don't even feel good enough to risk him the first game he comes back, whenever that is. So I'll pass until I see Keenan Allen actually make it through a full game. So that's the lowdown on which wide receivers should be in or out of your lineup. What about running backs? What about quarterback and tight end? Well, we got you covered. Check out our Week 6 playlist where we give you all the best fantasy advice to help you set those winning lineups.